So welcome everyone to Cost Management Part 2. My name's Simon Day, the Head of Consulting at Unify. So just a quick recap on what we did last week in Part 1. So we set up our budgets and our contracts. Today in Part 2, we're going to be looking at contract administration. And then if you join us for Part 3 that we're running next week, we're going to be looking at cash flow. So again, just a quick recap here. So last week we created a project. We explored using different types of cost structures in Unify. We imported a budget from Excel. We snapshot that budget to show it as our original budget and our approved budget that we report against. We handled some budget changes and looked at what a budget change request document would look like. And we created a contract and saw how that led to us being able to create a forecast. So today, what we're going to do is we'll just have a little recap of all of that. And then we'll come back to this. But just so you're aware of what we're doing today, we're going to start off by changing tack slightly and looking at the issue system and managing correspondence in Unify. But this is in the context of contract administration. So you'll see how it's relevant to what we're doing. And that will look at, how RFIs are done through Unify and how RFIs and other correspondence can lead to and link to variations. We'll then do a progress claim against our contract. Look at how retention works in Unify, where you might need to do that. We'll generate a PCG report. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So there's quite a bit to get on with. So we'll just leave it at this here because this is where we are going to start. So I'll just switch over to here and just do a quick recap of what we covered last week for the benefit of those who weren't in that session. I'm just searching for my I've just realized I'm logged in with the wrong profile, which is why I wasn't getting, here we are. So this was the project I created last week, the mass production facility for recently unlocked down areas. I'm in Melbourne, so I'm, wondering why that was at the forefront of my mind last week. We can see we've tagged that to our sectors. In the resource module, we assigned our project team, which was myself as a project manager, and I assigned someone else as a project director. I've got my client, the infamous Clive McClive from Clive World Enterprises, and the architect, Lisa McSpanner. Then in the costs module, we played around a bit with the blank chart of accounts, but then we created our budget using the post-contract chart of accounts, which if I now just put that to level 2 here and scroll down, we can see that here is our original budget. Here are some changes we've made to that budget. We took some money out of contingency and put it against the consultant budget, and we've started letting contracts against this budget here.
Sorry, Simon. When I go to cost, I don't see anything. Maybe my filters are wrong.
Do you have the post-contract chart of accounts selected?
No, not. 1 second. Yeah, it works now. Thank you. But it looks different to yours. Is it okay?
Yes, because it will be as however you set up the contract last time. It might be for a different value. Status of the contract might be different. Yeah, so we've got Unify generating our cost report for us. And that's also flowing through from the contracts module, where if I scroll down, here's my contract. And I've got my architectural design services deliverables here. You know, the deliverables for concept design, for schematic design and detailed design. And these have all been coded here through to our coding structure. So I know that this is coded against my budget for the architect. And we can track all of that through automatically into our cost report and get our forecast being updated as we do our contract administration in the contracts module. So for today, as I said, we are initially going to change tack. And I'm just going to pull across my Outlook here. And here's all sorts of emails from various Unify clients. But I've got just an example email here that's come through from Lisa McSpanner. And as you can see, it says RFI1, how many masks do they expect to manufacture per mask? That I think was meant to be per day. That's a typo on my part there in creating a fake email, but there you go. We'll run with it. So you'll notice up here, I've got this little button here that says Save to Unify. Now, if you're using Office 365 or your Microsoft Exchange is hosted through Office 365, you can also get this button added to Outlook simply by clicking on Get Add-ins here in Outlook and searching for Unify, UNIPHI, and you will get this Unify for Outlook. And you should get a little thing, mine is telling me that it's added already, but you can click on a thing there to add it. If that's blocked for whatever reason, you need to talk to your IT department about accessing it, and they can ask us complicated questions and we can answer that. But let's not worry too much about that right now. What this does is provides an integration with Outlook. And I'm just going to copy this URL.
Sorry, Simon, I have a question. Can it be integrated with Gmail or no?
No, only with Outlook.
Yeah.
So when I click on this, I'm just going to log out of that one. So basically what I do is I log in to Unify from Outlook. So I put in the URL here, which is this cost-management.unify-software.com that we're using for the training. And I'll just check what my login is. It's this here. So for most of you, your login will just be your email address, but mine is this for this particular deployment. And I put in my password and I click login, and now I'm logged in to this deployment from Outlook, exactly the same way as I log in my web browser. And I get 4 options here: new issue, append to issue, new document, and append to document. So I can use an incoming email to create or update an issue in Unify in the issues module, or to create or update a document in the documents module. This is particularly useful if you're being sent files or documents, and you can save them directly against a document in Unify to help you with document management, or to start off a workflow process that's driven by a document. But that's not what we're covering today. Today we're dealing with issues. So I'm going to click on new issue. And I'll just change that to per day there to correct my spelling mistake. But you'll see it's put the subject of the email as the issue description. RFI1, how many masks do they expect to manufacture per day? I then select my project here, which is my mass production facility. And I can also select a category for this. So you'll see here, we've got various categories of issues. And, you know, often these categories of issues relate to what you report against in, say, for instance, something like a PCG report or other monthly report that you might produce. And because, you know, this is a training deployment, we've got some odd ones in here, like ice cream. we have projects in this training deployment with ice cream issues, whatever they might be. But this is an RFI, so I select RFI. Assign to, I'm assigning this to myself. This is going to be mine to deal with. I can give it a due date. Let's say I want to get this question answered and turn around before the end of the week. I'm going to give it, I can give it a rating of high, medium, or low. Now, you can use this however it suits you. The way I use this is anything that's either important or urgent, I put as high. Anything that's neither important nor urgent, so it's there for, you know, information purposes, which can be important to log as well, I put as low, and whatever's in the middle I put as medium. I work out closing the highs, then check the mediums to see if anything have become high, and, you know, start again, rinse and repeat. Now, there's a drop down here that's called source. So this is the source of the RFI. And this is something that's been configured in this particular deployment of Unify and can be configured to suit your needs in your deployment. So the source of the RFI here is the architect. It's from my architect, Lisa McSpanner. And there's this external reference thing here, which I'll just put it in here, that's RFI 1. So I'm capturing Lisa's numbering of this. Now, if Lisa had attached documents, which you know, perhaps I should have done to demonstrate it, but I would get a little checkbox here to also include those documents. But I'll show you how you can attach documents if you need to. And we've got some templates here. I'm just going to select NCR here as a template to show you what this does. So then I hit save, and it tells me that this has been saved successfully into Unify. And here I get a link, and I can click on that link, and it takes me into the issue. There we are. Now, because I selected a template, that's also given me a list of actions, some of which have been assigned to me because I'm in the role of the project manager. And some need to be assigned to people. So what this has done, what this template is a way of creating standard workflows using issues with standard actions. Here's what we need to do when we get an RFI. Now, this is an NCR, which, you know, stands for a non-compliance record. We use that TLA, but I've thrown it in there as an example. So I've now got this logged in here. This means that anyone else who's working on this project can see this issue. They can see this email. So the email is no longer just stuck in my Outlook where no one else can see it. Anyone on the project can see this and chime in through a comment. They can attach things. They can even download the email and respond to it. But click on this here, open with Outlook. There we are. That's open the email, and I can respond to that email should I want to. So and I can do that even if it's not been sent to me. And, you know, I can chime in here and go, you know, and I can also, you know, attach a file just for the sake of attaching a file. I'll just do that unified background there. So, you know, we can share information through the comments thread. So anyone working on the project can comment, perhaps more usefully than I have, on what needs to be done. So I've looked at this and gone, yep, Lisa's right. The client is saying all sorts of things about the requirements, and we need to get an answer on this because A, as she rightly points out, if we're producing 3 million, you know, masks a day versus 300,000 masks a day, that's going to have a huge impact on the budget of the project. And there's work that they've done that they would need to do as rework, but as she said, it's not enormous, but there's going to be an impact and potentially a variation and potentially a budget change to all of this. So I want to start addressing that. So if I just go up here, you'll see I'm in the issues module, and there's my issue. It's categorized as an RFI. and it's got its due date. Now, for you guys, if you can also add an issue here by clicking on the add issue. So when you click on that, you'll see you get a very similar, well, it's identical to the fields that I got when I did it from Outlook. So if you can add your own RFI issue, and I'll give you a moment to do that. So we've logged our RFI. So we're going to move on now to creating a variation. So I'm going to the contracts module here. I'll just hide my charts here. I'm going to drill into my architectural services contract. And I'm in the value screen, which is a default view that you get when you drill into the contract. And I can see at the moment, this contract has got total deliverables of $2.95 million. If I scroll down past deliverables, I get to variations. Now, this RFI talking about a big change to the potential change to the design until we get it clarified from the client. This might lead to a variation. So I'm going to call this what am I going to call it? Clarification of mask throughput. And I've had a chat to the architect, and they think for them it's about a day's work of rework once we get the question answered if it's different from their design brief. So I'm going to say that's 8 hours, and we've got an agreed rate for them for these variations of $200 an hour. Sorry, it's hours. So that's going to be at $200 an hour. I've got a category here for my variations, and this is going to be scope change. I've got to code it to my cost structure. So this is again coded to the architect. And this is sitting here at the moment, this is just a possible variation. And at the moment, I'm also just going to leave that contingency there as none. I'm not going to flag this as drawing down on contingency. We're going to talk about contingency in a little bit. So I'll hit save here. And that has logged this as a possible variation. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, once I've saved that, is click on this comments section here. And when I drill in, you'll see that we get something here that is very similar to the issues module. And I can actually link this back to that other issue by clicking on related issues. So if I click on that and select my issue here, you will notice this turns into the very same issue. So here I am looking at the same information that I was looking at in the issues module. So the comments are synced up. And I can put in another comment here to continue the comment thread. So if I'm working in the contracts module, I can come in and go, oh, I've got some more information. I can just come in here and update this. Now, if I click here on the issue description, you'll notice now I'm back in the issues module. And I've got more information displayed because there's more data here around this issue that we've collated here. There are the actions, but there we are. There's the comment I just made. There's the rest of the comments thread. I've got access to the file attachments now as well. But I've also got this link here to the related variations. And when I'm in the issue, I can see, oh, we've got a variation logged for this, and there's the value of that variation there. Now, that's not the only place that this will appear. I go to the costs module now, and somehow I've ended up out of the project. So I'll select that project. You'll notice this column here of possible variations now has $1,600 in it, which is flowing through to consultants. Now I'm looking at this at level 2. If I expand that to level 3 and scroll down here, I can see possible variations, $1,600 to the architect. So that's being coded as a possible variation. It's feeding through into my forecast. So when I do anything in the contract, it's going to be updating that information. Now, the other place that this is feeding through is the communication module. So here we can see this is a basically a, if you like, a ticker of communication activity on the project. So there is the budget status document that we did as an example of a budget change last week. Today, there's the email from Lisa, saved and flagged as an email. Then we've got the issue itself, comments on the issue, a comment that's come through from the that was logged directly against the variation. And I can filter this as well. So, you know, I can do type and email. And if I'm using the Outlook add-in, by using this and filtering for email here, I've got an email register for the project. So I'm saving all my emails as part of my project record, but I can filter for other things. I can, you know, comments, documents, issues, risks, and so on. So this is a good way to see recent activity that's going on the project. So what I want to do now is provide an instruction back to close out this RFI. So I'm going to go to the Documents module and select New Document. And the document I'm going to go for is Project Manager Instruction. So we received an RFI from the architect and we're going to respond back with an instruction. So I select the Project Manager Instruction. And when I do that, my project is already selected here. That's fine. Over here, it's telling me who's going to sign it off, and that's going to be myself as a project manager. And then the document name's grayed out because it says it'll be automatically generated. So we select Create. And the first step here is to link this instruction to a contract. Now, we currently only have one contract on this project, which is the design services, architectural design services. So this is going to link this correspondence in this document to that particular contract. So when I looked at communication before, that was communication on the project. We can also see any correspondence that relates to a particular contract as well, which we'll look at in a little bit. So I'm happy with the contract I have selected. The next step here is to select the related issue. So yes, this relates to my RFI. I click link and that's now linked. Then I've got a step that's auto-generating a document number for me. So this is Project Manager Instruction number 1. And then here is my, actual instruction. So we've got a table here that is, saying what project is it for, who's the project manager, myself, PMI number 1, dated today. In response to RFI 1, how many masks do they expect to manufacture per day? This project manager instruction number 1. And I can, clarify that and I can, type in whatever my instruction is here. It can be fairly simple. And just do a spell check on that. There's a little spell check button here. But as we pointed out last week, this step is Unify's little word processor here. So I can write my instruction. Now, if I have any attachments to support what I'm talking about here, I can attach them here. They can be dragged and dropped into this, or I can use the attach file to, browse for them and find them. But I'm not using this step, so I'm going to click on that and do hide step. Now, you'll notice all these other ones here are hidden as well. So we're using them to link and create data in the document, but we don't want to actually show them in the final document. And then I've got my distribution list. So this is going to go to Lisa and also to the client as part of my distribution list. And I'll just uncheck those 3 boxes there because I don't need them. So save and continue, and we'll see here that here is my document name, project manager instruction number 1 regarding RFI 1, how many masks do they expect to manage per day? And I put that to awaiting sign off. I can now view that document. Here it is. If I want to see how it looks, if I was to send it out, I can click on so this little button here is the share button and hit save as PDF. And I'll see in a moment, it will generate a PDF. So here's what my PDF looks like. My project manager instruction, nothing particularly exciting, but certainly functional. And if I scroll down, if I'm happy with this, I can now sign that off. Done. And in this case, I am going to email it just to show you that functionality. So once it's signed off, I select email and I'm going to send it to Clive and Lisa. Now, please don't email yours out because even though this is a training one, I'll actually CC myself so you can see what that looks like. Because this will email it out. So you don't want to inadvertently send something to someone from this training site, but I'm doing it here to demonstrate it to you. So I hit send, that's been sent. I can close that and close that. Now, if I refresh the documents module here, you'll see this document appears and it also appears with this date sent here as well. So we know it was sent out today. Now, I just got a ping there to say that has been sent out. And when I click on this here, you'll see there's the email and there is the PDF that we saw before attached. So that's exactly the same PDF as I showed you a moment ago. If I'd had attachments to this as well, those attachments will be attached to this email too. When I drill into this document now, I scroll down, we have a transmittal register that is part of this document. So when you email it out, that transmittal becomes part of the document. So we've got transparency on there on who sent it, who did they send it to, when did they send it, and even what did they say. all built into this. And then, of course, this is here in my communication module as well. And then if I go into the issue and drill into the issue, I can see now that not only do I have a related variation, I have a related document as part of that. Now, one thing I forgot to point out before, when I opened the document, so I've just opened my document again, my PMI instruction, was this show hidden option here. So when I'm in the document, I click on show hidden and scroll down, it shows the steps that we had hidden. So I didn't use the attachment step that was hidden. There was the document number creation and the linking to the contract step that was also hidden. But you'll see here, by doing show hidden, I get to see the selected issue step, which is just a link to the issue. And I can actually use that to find the issue that I was managing. Why did I produce this document? There's the link that tells me, oh, here's everything else that went on that led to this document being, this project manager instruction being created. So now we are at the point where we've responded back to the architect, and let's say we've had another email in from the architect saying, yep, that's 2 days worth of work on this because the impact was bigger than our initial discussion. So I now need to update my estimate of the cost of the variation. So I'm going to go to the contracts module again, drill into my contract, into my value view, scroll down to my variation here and change that to 16 hours because that's what's come back from the architect, which is 3,200. Now I'm actually also going to type that 3,200 there into the submitted field because that is what the architect has submitted their value of their variation at. And they have called it VO1. So I'm putting VO1 in the reference field there. So I've got, or maybe they've called it VQ1. Anyway, whatever they've called it.
I have a question. Why in submitted I have 0?
Because you haven't put any data into submitted.
I should do it manually, yeah?
Yes, it's got to be put in manually. Okay. So the idea of the submitted is to capture what the other party has submitted as the value of the variation. The amount here is what I'm assessing and or approving, or initially when it's possible, my estimate of the variation. So my estimate of the variation was off by, 100%, but that was based on my discussions with the architect, which have then evolved. Still, we're not talking about large amounts of money here. So yeah, reference is to capture their variation number. ID is my variation number. At the moment, they're aligned, but there might be different terminology and they may not stay aligned. And the rest of it's fine. I'm now going to change the status of this to pending and hit save because we're now negotiating this variation. And if in another tab here, I go to the costs module, we will see that there's now no longer an amount in possible variations. That's now moved into pending variations and it's increased to 3,200. So again, as I go through and manage this, this will change and update my forecast essentially live. So back down here. Now, I've had another discussion with the architect about what's involved and pointed out some things that I think are unnecessary duplications in their quote. And we've settled on 12 hours for this. So I'm going to 12 hours, but what I'm capturing here is that they submitted 3,200 and now I'm assessing it. Actually, no, you only need 12 hours. So, I can demonstrate the value that I'm providing to the client by not just letting consultants get their variations approved or whatever they say. And now I want to issue them with a document approving their variation. So I click on the New Document button here. And once again, we're in a document creation screen. And we only get documents that are relevant to what we can do here within a contract. And you'll notice here is a project manager instruction. So I could have actually done that other project manager instruction before from within the contract. But here I've got variation order because that's what I'm going to create. And once again, I hit create. And I got my first step here of, what contract is this against? And that's already selected because I created this from within my architectural design services contract. So that's fine. And then I've got, what variations are available. And currently there's only one. So I tick that, say this is the variation that will end up being approved as part of this project. Yeah, so just to point out again quickly that if your contract is pending, you can't issue a variation. It has to be active to issue a variation. So you won't get this information showing even if you have a variation logged. Because with the simple logic that if the contract's pending, it's yet to be awarded, you can't do a variation to a contract that hasn't been awarded yet. So then we select the variation we're going to be approving here. Now, if you have multiple variations in this list, you can approve them in one variation order. So, or if you've got multiple line items for your variation, because you may have broken this down into more detail if that was needed. So, and you can select and unselect whatever information you want to display out of what's available here. Like I don't have the category selected, but I can tick that and have that appear. And I can also rename any of this. So you see here that that's named VQ rather than reference, which is what it is in the contracts module itself. If you have a contract where a variation is called something else, say it's called a contract sum adjustment, I can call it a contract sum adjustment. So, Unify can be aligned to whatever the terminology is in the contracts that you're managing. So I do save and continue. Oh, I forgot to date it. So this is my, approval date of this variation. Now here I can, so again, we've got our text box here to write our treatise on this particular variation, but let's just skip past that. And once again, internal reference. We're linking this back to the issue. So we know what correspondence this relates back to. So this is connecting up all your threads. So it's very easy to see, what led to what happened, which we'll look at. Then we get the variation order here. And you'll see that this is a table that is populated automatically. There's no project ID number here, so that's blank. And I haven't selected a contract standard for this. So, so this red here means that the template variable, which is how we auto-populate this information as text into templates or documents in Unify, it was missing this information. In this case, when I'm back in this detail view in the contract, I've got my contract standard here. If I change that and say, oh, this is a AS standard 4903, and then I go back into my document here and hit save again. Now that data was available, it's populated it. Now, the other thing I could have done is just deleted that as well. But yeah, if any of this data is missing, then you'll get that the $ with the red text indicates that Unify has been unable to get that data into the template. This one says redundant step, so I'm going to hide that. Not sure why that's there. But as you can see, this is a kind of standard letter. Related documents there, I can, attach things should I need to. And then my finish step, where again, I don't want to leave this as private. I want to set this to be a waiting sign-off. So I'm going to view document here. And just back in the value view here within the contract, I just want to reiterate something. So this is pending, the status pending here. And in the costs module, that's reporting as a pending variation of 2,400 here. I go back into my document, which I now have way too many tabs open, but here it is. I'm reviewing my document. There it is. There's a little summary telling me what it's going to do, the value of the contract, right? There've been nil variations to date. This one's worth 2,400. It's going to be a tiny little blip increase on the value of the contract. I'm happy with that. I can add my signature to it. So that is signed off. And again, I click on the share button. I'd email that out to the architect to tell them, yes, we've approved your variation for this amount. All good. Everyone's happy. I can close that document and close that view as well. Refresh my cost budget view here, and you'll see that this has disappeared from pending variations and moved over here to approved variations. And when I scroll down, architect, there we are. We've approved 2,400 against the architect. So that has happened automatically. I then go into the contract, and here in my contract dashboard, I can see there's the original value of the contract. I now have an approved variation and no potential variations. If I turn on the charts here, we can see, a comparison here between the original contract value and the, any variations, which is so tiny here that we can't see very much, but it is showing it there. It's just so tiny in relation to the rest of the contract. And when I drill into the contract itself in the value view and scroll down, that has now changed the status to approved. So by signing off that document, that has automatically updated the status of this variation to approved.
Sorry, Simon.
So now I want to show you using contingency with variations. So we're going to go back into the contracts module, drill into this, and let's say something else has come up. The client said they're going to be building a whole extra building. Wasn't part of the original scope. And the extra design work here is going to be, say, $800,000. I'm not going to put that in submitted. I'm going to put it just in the amount here. So, and I'm going to code it to the architect. This is still possible. I'm going to flag it as scope change again, because that's what the client is doing here, and hit save. So I've just added in a big variation as a possible variation at this point, because I want to look at what this does to my forecast. So my other tab here, I go to the costs module, and when I scroll down, I've now got this 800,000 here in possible variations. And when I get down to the line item by architect here, we'll see that this is actually taking me over budget for the architect. So it's taking me over by 250 grand. So we had some slack in our untended budget here for the architect. But we've used all of that up. So we're now going over budget on this line item. which means when I scroll up, we're going over budget overall. Now, I'm looking at this going over by 250 grand, but I've got $4 million of contingency here. So I don't need to be going over budget at this point. So back in here, again, in the contract, if I keep scrolling to the right, we've got some more codes here, including this one here, contingency code. So for this line item, I'm now going to select, do I have design? Better look at what I've got a budget for. I've got a budget for construction contingency only, not design contingency, even though I have a code for it. So I'm going to select construction contingency here. And what this does is tells Unify to draw down on my contingency for this variation. So when I go back to the cost module and just click on that to refresh it, let's hide my charts for the moment. You'll see that variance there that was 250 grand before has vanished. But can anyone else spot what else has changed?
If you go down to contingency, it would take out contingency.
Exactly right, Lee. You'll see here, my construction contingency, there's my budget there of 4.1. I'm now only forecasting 3.3 because there we are. I've drawn $800,000 out of it. Now, when I come up here, we'll see that we are $800,000 over in our forecast on this line item because we're not paying for it out of this line item. We're paying for it out of contingency. So the two balance each other out. So the idea is I can also see where my contingency is being used. So and if I just do the whole thing at level 2, we can see it all in one go here. We've drawn money out of contingency and we're using it here against consultants. So that's different before when we reallocated funds in our budget. Here we haven't touched our budget. What we've done is changed our forecast. So that's what the contingency code in variations in the contract does. It updates the way your forecast is working. Now, just to recap on last week as well, that only happens if when you're in the cost module in the forecast to complete view, that is set to auto here. So change that to manual, go back to level 3, looking at the whole thing here. Just to recap, I can manually set what my untendered values are against this, or I can click auto and have Unify calculate them. And that's when Unify is calculating them, it reallocated the contingency. If that was set to manual, it wouldn't do that. You would have to make that change yourself. So again, this is the idea that you update what's happening in your contract and it feeds through and automatically updates your cost report in Unify. So that's all the ins and outs of variations. So we're going to have a look now at progress claims and retention as we do our progress claims. So in the contracts module, I'm going to drill into the architectural design services contract and scroll down below the variations and you'll see that there is one here for value adjustments. So no, ignore me, I'm not using that. I'm in the wrong item. We're doing a progress claim. A progress claim doesn't change the value of my contract, does it? Answer to that is no. I want to be in the invoice view. So I go to the invoice view. And you'll see now we have a completely different view of the world here. We have the value of the contract. We have what percentage complete it is, what amount, the amount being claimed, how much is left to complete. So if I've received a claim from, say, the architect for this work, I can assess this claim and put in what they are claiming. Now I can put it against any one of these columns, percentage complete, amount complete, this and this claim. So for instance, I can look at it and say, yep, I know that they are 50% of the way through concept design. I can put it through at that level 1 there and hit save. And it applies that 50% down to the lowest level, which is in this case is level 2. And that's worth $75,000 because they're 50% of the way through concept design. Now, I could look at this and say, you know, sure, they're 50% of the way through the design drawings, but they're only 25% of the way through the report. Yes, Dana.
Where are you exactly right now?
I'm in the contracts module, in the contract, and I've gone to the invoice view.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that.
So I can assess these differently.
I haven't got the invoice view. I've clicked on contracts and I can't see invoice.
So have you drilled into the contract itself, Lee?
No.
Yep. So when you go into the contract, it takes you to the value view, and I'm just changing across to the invoice view.
Thank you.
So yeah, so I can play around with that to say, yeah, this whatever percentage I want to do. I could also have just typed in the amount or this claim amount. So for instance, if this one was worth 49, I could just type $49,000 in there, hit save, and that updates what's being claimed. Now, you'll see there's an export button here. I'll just show you something with this. So I've just exported this list of deliverables to Excel. Here it is. So there's my list of deliverables, and they've got a deliverable ID here. So if you have an enormous list of deliverables and a contractor or a consultant or subcontractor is giving you their claim in Excel, we can map it to import it into Unify. So for instance, if this claim amount here on that was, say, 53,000, and on this one was 28,500. So I can just copy this. And it doesn't have to be in that format. We just need to be able to map it somehow. Click import here, paste it in. And now I'm going to use deliverable ID to map it because this is a code that's in Unify for this deliverable that'll map exactly to it. But if I had reference numbers that were unique here, say a WBS coding or some kind of reference number coding, I could map to that. Mapping to the description, you'll notice, is not robust. So you're either mapping to a reference number or the deliverable ID. You need to have one or the other. And then what I want to do is map to this claim amount, right? And not the percentage complete. I only want to map to one thing for the value. So I hit validate and it says, yes, that's all fine. I hit import and then close. And you'll see that because I did a typo there and typed 530,000 instead of 53,000, it's imported 530,000 as the claim amount. So the import worked perfectly, but my typing skills leave something to be desired. So I can take that 0 off there and bring that in. So they're claiming 80,000. So, I mean, for contract that's short like this, that's not a big deal. It's easier usually just to type in the amounts. But if you've got a contract that runs to hundreds of lines, getting them to supply it in Excel and uploading it is obviously going to be much, much faster to get the data into Unify. I scroll down, I do the same thing against the variations. Now, you'll notice here, my big $800,000 variation doesn't appear because it is a possible variation. So it's, you know, not one that I'm telling the architect about at the moment. It's only possible. It's not even yet pending. And let's say I know on this variation it's been approved, they've done 50% of the work. So we're going to pay them for that. So I'll put that amount against the variation. Then below this, we have claim adjustments. Now, if you are doing a claim adjustment, this is where you put it in. So an example of a claim adjustment is retention. So holding retention. And the most common form of that is a derivative-based retention. And so I'm going to click on Add Derivative. So we've got a few standard descriptions here to work with. You know, I mean, one form of claim adjustment might be an advance. You might be advancing them funds at an early point in the contract to give them cash flow to do their work, and then you pull back that money as the claims go forward. The opposite of that is retention, retaining things. Another one is superintendent withholding. You know, maybe a reason you're withholding funds from them under the contract. So there's a bunch of options here to choose from. So I'm going with retention to date. Retention to date, there it is. And then what I can set up is, what is the value of the retention? And let's say, in this case, we're holding 10% of the value of the contract. So I put in -10 because we are holding that money back, not advancing it. So if we're holding it back, it's negative. And then I have the option here of making that of the original contract value or the adjusted contract value. So adjusted contract value includes approved variations. And whichever one applies will depend on what the contract says. If you are doing any retention under the contract, you pay attention to whatever the contract says. So in this case, let's say it's the adjusted contract value. And then I put in how much are we holding back per claim of that. And let's say we're holding back 25% per claim. So that means that front loads this retention onto the earlier claims. So we take up to 25% of the claim until we hit that 10% level of the contract. So it's going to reduce the value of their early claims. And then later at the end of the contract, we release that retention once we know they have done the work. Now, this still needs to be coded. And this is the architect's contract, so it's still coded to the architect. So
with that 10% and 25%, that's
yes.
where you go, okay, I'm going to hold back like $1,000 or 10% of the claim.
Yes.
Up to $1,000.
Yep.
So you could do it that way?
Yep. Yeah. So I've done it calculated based on these percentages.
Yeah.
You can add one that is just an amount. You know, so if the rules under your contract don't fit this model of a total amount that's being held back, in this case 10%, and then an amount per claim till you hit that threshold of, so we're holding about 25% of the claim until we hit the 10% threshold. If it doesn't fit that because you've got something that's way more complicated than that or nowhere near as complicated than that, then you can just work it out yourself and do, in this claim, I'm going to hold back $1,000, code that also to the architect. And that's a simple retention that's just going to hold back $1,000. And you're just going to calculate that against this claim, and then if when the next claim comes through, you might up it to 2,000.
Yeah.
So you can just adjust it as it goes forward.
Okay.
So that one you're working it out yourself.
Yeah.
I'm going to get rid of that one because I just want my derivative-based one. So there's the two options: one where you work out the retention yourself, and one where you have Unify calculate it for you. Thanks, Lee. That was a good question. So Okay, so once we're happy with what we're assessing this claim at, or you know, if we're just processing an invoice, that we've matched the amount on the invoice before any tax, so before any, you know, GST or any other type of tax, and we're happy with, you know, this number here before retention's applied. Well, actually, this one includes retention. You can see there's the total that's been claimed against deliverables and variations, and then we've got this retention that we're holding back. So as long as we're happy with that, we click on any of these new document buttons to create our progress claim. So here we have 3 different templates to select from. And I will now attempt to remember which one we have used in the past. So we're going to use certified progress claim, the first one. And we'll see that when we select certified progress claim, once again over here on the right, it says who is going to be signing this off. In this case, this needs to be signed off by the project director and the project manager. So these sign-off rules can be set by you, well, by your system administrator when the templates are designed. And they can be customized to suit the rules you have in your organization. Now, once again, this is going to get its document name generated automatically. So we select create. And once again, we have our list of steps for the workflow we need to do for this document. So the first step is our certification. So this is where the details of the progress claim are shown. So we have this table here of the original contract value. This one doesn't have any provisional sums, so that's nil, but we can handle provisional sums in Unify. It's just a different type of deliverable. Approved variations, there's our 2,400. There aren't any pending variations. Remember, we have a possible variation, but the possible variation does not show up here. If it was pending, it would. The logic behind that is if it's pending, then the other party knows about it because you're negotiating it and you've communicated it. Total value of contract work completed. So that's against our original contract sum. Total value of variations completed. Total amount less retention. Total amount being certified, $62,025. There's the tax. So less previously claimed, there haven't been any. This is our first claim on this contract. Total being certified tax, amount including tax. Now, if at this point I've received the invoice, I always open up the invoice and have a look at it and see whether the amount on the invoice including tax matches this. And if it does, I'm happy. If it doesn't, it means that the other party has probably made a mistake on their invoice, which, you know, can happen pretty frequently, more so in some industries than others. You know, if someone's calculating it themselves and doing their invoice in Microsoft Word, they're going to get this wrong from time to time. If they're using a robust system like Unify, then that will never be a problem. So I'm making sure I'm happy with that number and it matches my invoice. So back up here, claim number 1, if I have the invoice at this point, I can put the invoice number in here. There's my invoice number. I can even attach the invoice here at this point. I'm not going to do that, but you know, it's a file attachment step. You find it, you attach the invoice, attach a PDF. Contractor's claim date. So if it's a claim, it's the date of their claim. If it's an invoice, it's the day of their invoice. Let's say it was dated the 25th, a couple of days ago. The due date will be based on the payment terms set in the contract. Receive date. So when did we receive it? Let's say we received it yesterday. So this is helping us to record when we received it. And then certification date, that's going to be today. When are we certifying this claim? Payment method, don't worry about that. There's nothing set there. That's used in some cases where we connect to a finance system where we have to tell it how to pay the claim. Is it EFT? Are they issuing a check? is it a bank check, all that sort of stuff. But for most of you, that will never be used, so you just leave it as blank. Once you're happy with all of this, scroll to the bottom, do save and continue. So then I get my header to my payment certificate that gets generated. I do save and continue. I've now got a summary of my deliverables at level 1. So this is kind of summarizing my deliverables without the gory detail, what's being claimed against them. Save and continue again. Now I've got a much more detailed breakdown of my deliverables. Now, your documents don't have to be configured to this extent, but this is just showing you what can be done. So we can show different, views of the information coming out of the contract. This breakdown of a summary and the detail can be very useful when you have a very long contract. So save and continue, a table here for variations that are approved. A table here for any pending variations, retention, claim adjustments, unfixed materials, and the other functionality we have. So this is just showing the details of the retention. And once again, we get to the end. Our document name's been created, progress claim number 1 for October 2021. And I'm going to set that to awaiting sign-off. So I hit view document again, once I've set my status to awaiting sign-off. And there it is. And I can review this and add my signature. So most of you should have me as the project director. So if you can go through and create your progress claims and set it to awaiting sign-off, and I will have a look at, wait to see this when I go, if you recall, to the summary module, to all projects and my sign-offs here, and wait for these to come through here so we can get them all signed off and then see what that does. So we've now signed off our progress claims. And I've done all my sign-offs as your project director. So when I go back into my contract here, I can look across here and see that against this contract, we've now claimed 2% of the contract. We've had a progress claim for $62,000, and we've got $3.7 million to complete. Turn on my charts here, and we can see we've got a little bit more information going on here. Because we put a bigger chunkier variation in here on this chart here, we've got original. We can't see the approved variations because they're just visually too small. And there's our potential variations there of 800K. Here's a relative size comparison here versus original and approved and potential variations. And then here, what we're looking at is the total value of the contract and how much has been claimed against it. And that's obviously what this is telling us here for all the contracts. So if I had a whole list of contracts here, I'd get, more information being flowed through here into these charts. I come to my costs module. Actually, while I'm in the contracts module, I will drill in to the contract. Nothing has changed here in my value view, but when I go to my invoice view, you will notice that the previous claimed column has now been filled out. So when we signed off that progress claim, that moved it from this claim into the previous claim. So when I go to do the next claim against this contract or purchase order, we know exactly what's been claimed before. We don't have to calculate anything. We can just put in an updated percentage complete or this claim amount or total amount complete, and Unify will calculate the rest for us. It's very robust in managing that claim from one claim to the next if you sign off those claims, including calculating that retention down here. We know what's been claimed there for the variations and for the retention. So I go to the costs module here, and nothing changes here because this is just the total value of things. It's not, what's been claimed, but there's another view here. And you'll notice here we've got this cash flow view here that's now appeared. Next week's training session, you will get a lovely cash flow appearing here because we're going to go through doing this. But if I change the view here from contractor to financial, that's still nil. But if I do actuals to October, so bringing it up to the current month, there's my actual claim that we just processed there against that contract. So just going back in to here, we have one more thing to do to close out today, which is to create a PCG report. Now, what we're going to use is all the information that we have done so far in Unify to generate the PCG report and generate it quickly. So I'm going to go to the Documents module. I can do New Document and select PCG report from my list of templates. So there's PCG report basic and PCG report. I'm going to select the first one. Again, this is telling me signed off by the project manager. I select create, and this is a nice simple document with only 18 steps. And actually, I don't mean that with any kind of, irony or sarcasm here, because I'm going to be able to do this very quickly. So version control, happy with that, save and continue. Distribution list, who's this going to? Yep, that's going to go to everyone on the project. Great. Milestones, I haven't done any milestones in this because it's not part of this training, so I'm going to hide that step. Schedule issues. This is giving me a graph here showing my issues by rating. That's great. Here is a list of all my issues so I can report on what's happening on the project and select the relevant fields. Great, save and continue. My reporting period here is October. This is going to give me stats on what's been happening across issue categories. Now I've only got one, which is RFI, tells me there was one created in the period, hasn't yet been closed, still open at the end of the period, one created to date. Financial year versus budget. If I do the October period, you can see here we've got transactions. Now there's nothing in forecast and budget here yet because we're going to be doing the cash flow next week. So with more cash flow next week, this step will make more sense. So we'll sort of park this and come back to it next week. Contracted costs versus budget. So here we have essentially the same information that was in our cost report in the cost module in Unify that we've been looking at and updating along the way. The one thing this has is variance. So in addition to variance to budget, it's got variance to last forecast, which is this column here. If I create this document this month and create another one next month, it will show the variance between the two. So this is how we create a variance to the last forecast, by doing a document and comparing it to the document the previous month. So to do that, I have to select the document, but there wasn't one last month, so it doesn't have it because this is a new project this month. Again, cash flow, there's nothing yet because we haven't done it yet, so we will come back to it. This is another issue step, which we've done. It just allows you to show, different issues of different categories for different context in the report. Risks, there's our risk matrix. We haven't logged any risks because it's not part of this training, so I'll just hide those steps. Variations, this is telling me that, yes, I can show a variation register here. Extension of time, no extension of times yet for any of the contracts. Progress claim, all contracts, there's my progress claim register. And then I'm here at my executive summary, and I can write, all the wonderful words that go into the executive summary, explaining how wonderfully I'm managing this project. And we've got some standard text to start it off. And then I can add some graphs into the executive summary. Now, for instance, here I can do this budget by version graph, which if I select two versions, my original and my revised, and hit save, and actually change this to show it to level 2 and hit update, this will show how I have shifted a little bit of money out of contingency and put a little bit of money into consultants, but it's not all that visible because we're being dominated very much by the construction budget there. But you can show visually how funds have moved around. Finish step, I'm going to put that as open for review. View document, and there is my PCG report done. Now, I know that was super fast. The point was that it was super fast, that we can very quickly get a whole lot of detailed information into a document and to report very quickly when we're using Unify for contract administration on a project. And of course, the more contracts you have and the more you're doing this stuff day to day, the richer this information will be. And at the end of the training session on cash flow next week will be even richer, and we can have the cash flow information report through. I just want to show you a couple of other things. One is in the menu under reporting and reports, we have both program and project reports. So under program reports, there's a whole lot of contract reports here. So that tell you different things about contracts.
Sorry, Simon, where are you now?
Contract. Can I just finish this update and then I'll do some more questions? So I'm going to run the contract progress report for my project, which is the mask factory. Just give the report a moment to update. And this has given me some summary information about this particular contract. So there's a whole lot of, well, it will be all the contracts on the project, but we just have one contract on the project for the moment. There's a whole range of information here and a whole lot of different contract reports here. Then under the project reports, we also have contract related reports, in particular the registers. So EOT register, issue register, and if I scroll down, there's my variation register, and there's also a progress claim register there as well. So lots of things to explore in the reports. Last thing I want to point out today, if I just jump into my project again and drill into the contract again, is two views here within this contract. The correspondence view, where within this contract, I can see, like I could see for the project under the communication module, everything that's been going on for this project. What issues, what comments, what documents, what emails. There's that whole history of everything we've done today on this contract. Then there's the registers view here. So there's a variation register. I can see what variations I've logged and what documents I have issued or created for those variations. So we can see we've issued a variation order for this one, but not for this one. A progress claim register as well. If I had extensions of time, that would be there too. And then a related documents register here. So any other document I've issued, so in this case, project manager instructions, what's been issued in relation to this contract, there it all is. So a whole lot of really rich information relating to that. Yes, Dana?
I don't have register in a contract.
You have to be drilled into the contract. So when you're in the dashboard, it's not there.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
You've got to drill in to see the register for that contract. So I went a bit fast then. Cool. So thank you, everyone, for attending today's training session. And we'll be reconvening next week to do cash flow.